Welcome to Life Update number 86. They taunted me. I looked at the homemade chocolate chip cookies and scoffed. Ha! You fools! You think you can tempt me? I don't even want you. You're disgusting, putrid. You don't even look appetizing. The cookies took my insults in stride. They were so heartbroken they couldn't muster the strength to defend themselves. Or they were smug, knowing something I didn't. It was merely the first day of my fast. I had no way to know. But even so, my abuse was feigned. It was human nature. We scorn that which we cannot have and declare as righteousness our absence from that which we cannot obtain, lest we be reminded of our longing unfulfilled. But of course, though I knew that, being the profoundly introspective man that I was, the cookies didn't, so I kept up my barrage all the same. Even just looking at you, I can tell your texture would be grainy. You call those chocolate chips? What kind of cookie has cube-shaped chocolate chips? Well, that's embarrassing. And I went on. After a while, I was certain the wafers had taken significant psychic damage, though I admit they did a good job of not showing it. Still, I was confident the wounds I had inflicted were fatal, so I left the cookies alone to die. Yet, to my surprise and chagrin, when I arose the next morning, the cookies had not died, but had somehow managed to seem more succulent than before. I gazed at the pastries from afar before engaging, trying to discern if it were by some hidden power they now exhibited such vitality, or if it were merely a trick of my incessantly growling stomach. After I had watched them from the shadows for a sufficient time, and had seen no unusual behavior, I then emerged from my hiding place and confidently sauntered into their view. "It would seem I underestimated you," I said, hands behind my back, as I passed in front of the cookie jar. "But do not think of me as a fool. Don't think you've caught me unawares. Perish the thought. Nay, I have you right where I want you." My monologue was interrupted as a gentle, pleasant aroma somehow managed to waft from the cookie's sealed glass cage. Against my will, I felt saliva begin to pool in my mouth. I shook my head violently. "No!" I yelled. The cookie spell broke, and I regained my composure. "Oh, you're clever. Very, very clever." I put my face right up to the jar and took a deep breath in through my nostrils. The smell caught to me. It whispered in my ear, "Just one bite," and I felt my will begin to falter. Still, I held fast and even took another good whiff for good measure. "Alex, you're weird. You think that little trick is enough to beat me? Perhaps you aren't as clever as I thought." I pulled my head back, perhaps a bit too sharply. I should have liked to make the withdrawal calm and measured, but I simply couldn't smell the cookies any longer. The temptation was just too great. Careful to not betray the fragility of my resolve, I took slow, long strides away from my foe. "Think you have bested me if it gives you the peace at night? But the only laugh that matters is the last." And with that, I walked away, my dignity intact. "Alex, you're arguing with cookies. You should have no dignity." The next day, my hunger howled. It wrecked my stomach, and I found myself on my knees before the jar, gazing within. There were more now. Their numbers had grown overnight, and the cookies that rested gingerly atop were so fresh. The scent was stronger than ever. I didn't even bother to try and feign composure as saliva dripped from my agape expression. Oh gosh. "Maybe just a bite," I thought to myself as my hand removed the lid. I caught myself. "No, Alex, you can't. Think of the children." "What children?" "Lol, don't ask me how keeping my fast helps children, but I assure you it does. If it weren't for the children, I wouldn't have made it so, at least in that moment. Children's lives were at stake, okay? XD. My mind drifted to the children, and I held my hand. "But you know," a slithery voice whispered within, "no one said you couldn't smell them." My mind raced. That's right. The children will be all right if I just smell them. A smell never hurt anyone. After a moment's hesitation, I had convinced myself, and I tossed the lid aside. Before I knew it, I had reached for a cookie and had grasped it. Its soft texture felt so good in my hands. I brought it to my nose and breathed deeply. Euphoria came over me as the fragrance filled my being. If it smells this good, think of how good it must taste. The thought, though unwelcome, permeated my mind. "What if you only took a bite?" the voice suggested with a hiss. "Just one." I took another breath and closed my eyes. How good it must taste. Oh, how good it would taste if only I should just raise it to my lips. But then, just as I was about to cave, the face of a starving, nameless child shook me free. No, I said quietly, almost mourning. I can't. No. My voice grew in conviction, and my eyes snapped open. No! I thrust the cookie back in the jar, slammed on the lid, and fled, lest my strength fail. That night I lay awake, dreaming of the cookie and all other manner of food, of Cane's, of Chick-fil-A, of Five Guys, till the sun rose. Haunting temptations assaulted me yet. Somehow I remained, strong and steadfast, and at the end, after all had been endured, I felt overwhelming peace. My hunger, though ever present, subsided, and I knew I would not fall prey to which assaulted me. The fourth day I passed the cookies once more, but this time I did not cast them a second glance. I walked right by, unhindered by machinations and pleas for my affection. I paid them no heed, and rested into my conviction. Finally, the day of freedom came as I strode through the halls of the monastery a final time, and without prompt or ceremony, lifted a cookie from its jar and placed it gingerly in a napkin till the proper time came. Then, when that time came, I partook, and took the bite that eluded me those 4 days. And what a bite it was! The experience made it all the more worthwhile by the absence that preceded it. And that, my dear friends, is the tale of the taunting cookie, a mostly true story, from my time at the Abbey, where that cookie was the bane of my fasting existence. But the happenings of my monastic retreat shall be shared in due time. Till then, let me expound upon what has happened in life generically. The coverage of events from the last life update extends till Friday, which I spent doing quiet time in the morning, then working for 5 hours, during which I finished the last life update and read, running, reading more, playing a game of Catan, which I lost, and then playing Minecraft with Ben and Zach till 1 in the morning. Saturday began novelly with a meetup with Naomi Stanky at Little Bird. We talked for 2 hours or so, and it was actually a pretty good conversation. See, that's surprising because Naomi, in typical INFJ fashion, hated my guts for quite some time on account of my blunt and frankly rude nature. Hence, for us to have a conversation we both enjoyed is both unexpected and a testament to mutual growth. After that, I got home and called with Katie and Alan over some Minecraft as Katie updated us on the boyfriend situation. I then worked out, got my electric scooter assembled. That thing is great, by the way, well worth the purchase. And then I functionally wasted the rest of the day, though it was technically spent playing video games with Zach. Sunday began with church and a Jake walk as per usual, but then as per usual, I played D&D for 8 hours straight till 10 at night, like the good old days. John ran a one-shot for Noah, Joe, Neo, Sydney, and me. It was a pretty good one-shot. We all got to play characters from past campaigns, and it was full of cameos and references, which, lol, Noah and Joe didn't get, but Neo, Sydney, and I all loved XD. Once that ended, Benj picked me up, and we went on a canyon drive, listening to bops through his new subs. That was good. Then I did a brief electric scooter ride at night, and then went to sleep. The next day I went to work, where I finished the book I was on. Then I came home, and Mom bought me a whiskey still burger as a last hurrah before I left for my monk retreat the next day. I then went to Monday night and did all the typical things, and then, that night, on a whim, Grace and I went out. Me on the scooter and her on blades. Dog leash attached, and it was great. The scooter does pretty darn fast, and Grace was clinging for her life at some points. XD. Also, right before I went to sleep, I used AI to help me find good Defiance of Cancer songs. And then the next morning I got up, packed, and journeyed to Virginia Dale for the monk retreat. All right, let's talk about the brief era of monks. Part of the whole point of the retreat was that I wouldn't have any distractions, so my phone was powered off for the entirety of the 4 days I was at the monastery, and I wasn't allowing myself to be productive in any ways, so I took notes. Hence, all of this is from pure unprompted memory, so lol, we'll see how I do. First off, the reason. Why monk? Well, the biggest reason, as I have touched very briefly on in past life updates, but have not expounded upon, was that my relationship with God was suffering pretty bad. Although I didn't consciously admit it to myself until a little before the retreat, I was honestly quite salty with God, and I have to go through all this. There's a lot of facets as to why I feel that way, but life updates really aren't the place for me to expound on that in depth. So let's just summarize it and say my situation really sucks, and I blamed God for me still being in it. I tried to work through some of the stuff between me and him while at home, but it just wasn't happening. I knew I needed to take some serious time away and really make repairing that relationship my entire focus. So yeah, hence 4-day monk retreat. The second biggest reason, also baby hinted in the life updates, but not expounded upon, was that although trying to cure myself of cancer and a lot through Becky Dawson, I had discovered this whole vein that was like trauma causes cancer. And of course, at first I was like, yeah, sure, and heck no, I don't have any trauma. But I kept seeing the idea over and over and over again in my reading. I then started to take the theory seriously and started thinking, well, since I don't have any trauma, I might as well give it a shot. Check it off the list of non-functional cures. After all, I had no emotional baggage then, and I would have no problem doing the introspection the books prescribed. However, at first, to my first puzzlement, then vexation, and then terror, I gradually discovered that not only do I have trauma that I was hiding from myself. There was a whole side of myself in my experience I had literally blocked off from my memory, and which had been subtly influencing me my entire life until that point. So yeah, discovering that super sucked on so many levels. It only goes to show that even if you do a lot of work to be healthy, that doesn't mean that you've by any means finished. XD. So yeah, found that out approximately 4 months ago. It was actually William that put the first crack in my defenses. While he was here, we went on a number of walks, if you recall. During some of those, he was able to argue me out of my, in retrospect, absolutely idiotic rationalizations for fundamentally emotional hurts. I think William is probably the only person who could have formed that first initial crack, because a key part of my unconscious defenses was using my immense arguing skills to back up my neurosis, and William is the only person I know who has a fluid intelligence and debating skills that genuinely rivals mine. So, yeah. Because my position was stupid, and we are about equivalent in arguing skill, William kicked my butt and proved to me that what was driving my arguments wasn't rational. I can't express to you how immeasurably grateful I am that he did that. William, if you ever read this, thank you so much. Also, thank you for developing your intellect and TE to the point where I couldn't just argue around you. If nothing else happens, I hope that makes the immense amount of work you've put in well worth it. Anyway, as soon as that happened and I started investigating and everything started to crumble, the thread I grabbed onto came in the form of a system I had learned about in the past, but had mostly forgotten about, called attachment styles. The framework is extremely simple. There are only 4 categories, but is one of the most scientifically backed psychological systems on the market, and oh my gosh, it's so helpful. However, I didn't introduce the system to you while I was going through the thick of it because I have the most messed up attachment style, fearful avoidant. About 2% of the population has it, and I just wouldn't have been able to handle it if I had been mocked or teased for that. So while I am choosing to make you all aware of this system now, I just wanted to make it super clear that this isn't spiral dynamics or MBTI. The system is fundamentally about deep childhood wounding. So it's not really the place to make jokes around or say things like, oh, you only say that because you're anxious. It may feel all well and good and like it's not a big deal if you're secure, but take it from someone who's not naturally secure. It can be deeply hurtful if you haven't healed just yet. So yeah, I'm happy to talk about the system and point you towards resources for healing your own attachment style and also walk you through it, but I'm trusting you to treat this particular system with a level of care around others that you may not be used to. Also, this way of categorizing people is super prevalent in mainstream media. So I will say, do be a bit wary about just looking up stuff. There are good sources out there to be sure, but also a lot of garbage as well. A lot of stuff that's just unhelpful. Feel free to hit me up if you want some high quality resources on the subject. Anyway, obviously it took real and very intentional work on my part, but as soon as I started being like, that's odd, and questioning myself, it was like I pulled on a thread and my whole defense fabric began to unravel. As that began to happen, I dived into my fearful avoidant tendencies. Johanna and Noah became absolutely crucial players in holding me together as I dealt with some really deep wounds. If it weren't for them, I probably would have broken down and stopped functioning. So when you two read this, just know that I'm deeply grateful. Let me tell you, the process was rough, like maximally rough. I didn't write about it in life updates because, again, it just wasn't the place to do so. But man, working on healing from that basically dominated my life. Also, it's important to note, it's not like I'm done. I've just made progress. I feel comfortable sharing because I know this information could be life-changing for you like it was for me. So yeah, I started working through my messed up attachment style, got into semantic theories as well as internal family systems, and both of those tools really helped me with the healing process. Again, hit me up if you want resources. There was a bit of baggage, and I had been carrying up to this point, and if you want to go into the specifics, I'd be happy to talk about it, or at least some of it, one-on-one. Thus, gradually over the last 4 months, I made progress and started to genuinely heal. I could tell you there was some big roadblock keeping me from my completing the process. Well, completing is a strong word, but you know what I mean. Hence, that's all a long way of saying that healing my trauma was the second big reason for the monk retreat. And who would have thunk, it turned out my baggage and my rocky relationship with God were deeply interconnected. So yeah, those two goals in mind, I knew I would need a new environment where I could be intentional about disassembling my defenses in a safe place. And that is what the monastery ended up being. You have to understand, I did nothing but think, pray, and sleep for about 85 or so hours straight. It was brutal, like actually brutal. I went through quite a number of very painful things where I felt them fully for the first time in my entire life. And it took so much self-control not to just cave and distract myself or go back to employing the defenses that felt so natural. Plus, the whole time I was water fasting, so I was mega hungry, and that just made it harder. XD. But yeah, by some miracle, I didn't fold and worked through issue by issue until finally, halfway through day 4, I came to what I really think was the end. It's technically possible I deceived myself, but I'm pretty convinced I actually got through all the trauma and hurt I had kept hidden from myself. I'm sure there will be more work to do in the future, but at least right then, I was totally free. And let me tell you, it feels amazing. Like, though I didn't know until more recently, I've been fighting a two-front war for ages, both against myself and everything else. Now that I've vanquished the demons that were constantly haunting me, I feel so much better. And also like facing the world, and all it has to throw at me is going to be a piece of cake, XD. Lol, I'm sure I won't feel that way at some point, but for now, death is still like 0% daunting. So yeah, at the end of those 3.5 days, I reached a major milestone, and I think it was worthy of christening Alex 3.0. Sure, it didn't all happen at once, but the monk retreat was the culmination, hence the designation. In general, I've been so much happier and healthier since. Well, lol, except regarding what I've been eating since XD, since I've been eating worse, but it's tasty, so don't worry about that. Obviously, you might not be ready to go inside and deal with all the trauma you may or may not deny exists. I mean, I wasn't for 23 years. But if any of you get to the place, some point where you are ready to do that and need some resources, I totally got you. Also, I highly recommend fasting from everything and getting away to someplace by yourself for 4 days. Genuinely one of the hardest and most challenging things I've ever done, but also one of the best. So yeah, the big summary for the monk retreat is that it was the culmination of significantly healing some really deep wounds, and while the process was really ugly, and lol, you didn't get to see that part, XD, it was also so worth it, and I ain't never going back to Alex 2.0. 3.0 is here to stay, baby. Also, again, want to emphasize my journey in this domain is not complete. It's just I'm far enough along, I don't think any of you can accidentally murder me, XD. I'm sure I'll be dealing with my past in little ways for quite some time, but regardless, real progress was made, and I want to offer myself as a resource to any of you who also want to take that massive step. Okay, meta summary over. Let's talk about non-important parts of the monk retreat. Point 1, fasting for 4 days while having absolutely nothing to distract you sucks. Oh my gosh, fasting without distraction is so much harder, and the conniving nuns had this jar of homemade chocolate chip cookies they so generously offered to their guests that I had to look at every single day, as dealed within the exaggeration in the intro. It was actually so vexing. Also, after about day 2, all your dreams are filled with whiskey still burgers and canes and pizza, and that does not help the issue. The other really rough thing is it's really hard to sleep when you have no distractions and are hungry. Hence, I ended up staying up till 5 or 6 in the morning most nights, which led to some non-trivial sleep deprivation. But honestly, I think all the discomfort accentuated the inner work I had to do, so lol, it was worth it. Also, if you want to get cut and get skinny, let me tell you, 4 days of fasting is peak. Guys, I actually looked so good at the end of those 4 days. Like, look at this. Me before fasting, me after fasting. Like, oh my gosh, I look great. Lol, not to toot my own horn, XD. See, originally I thought this marked the end of my formal hotness transformation, since I expected myself to be doing salvage now. So, lol, it was going to be time to go back to being fat and ugly, baby. But lol, it seems like that's not the case. So, may the hotness transformation continue, just with like a 2-week intermission, XD. So yeah, I had a cool looking body for a day, then I pseudo-succeeded a nun, my bad. I think I pseudo-seduced a nun. Oh, there we go. Huh. Let's see. I prayed a lot, and I also joined in for the literary hours of many, many times, and there were so many psalms read and cool, reverent vibes. The first day I was there, I looked at the cool rocks and found some really cool rock formations I can't show you because lol, no phone. But every day after that, my body felt too weak, so I couldn't. You should have seen how slowly I walked down the driveway. Like old men with walkers could have beat me in a race, XD. Yeah, I mean, as far as things I did externally, the answer is basically nothing. On day 2, I sobbed in front of the head mother as we prayed and got snot all over her cross from the literal pope, so that was classy of me. I was anointed with bone juice oil. That was cool. See, the Abbey of St. Walburga has, you guessed it, St. Walburga as their patron saint, and it turns out the story goes that every year from October to exactly February 25th, St. Walburga's feast day, this mysterious clear liquid collects on her bones and is then harvested by the nuns at her tomb and distributed to the Walburga abbeys across the world. Ooh, that's kind of gross. Hence, the abbey had received some of its very special healing oil, and the head mother, hearing about my cancer and seeing my frankly candid displays of distress, decided to give me some. Unfortunately, it didn't end up doing anything. I really thought it might, but I anointed myself with it every day until I left. I only got this tiny bottle of stuff, which is also a holy relic, by the way, so it didn't last long. Let's see, what else? All right, here's some pictures of the place. Insert pictures here. The cathedral is super beautiful. The rest of the facility, not so much XD, but it still wasn't unpleasant, just very average. Nuns are cool. I give them like an 8 out of 10 coolness, though no way I would ever become a religious. Way too much ritual. I don't know how they do the same thing every day for their whole life. That would kill me. They get an 8 out of 10 mostly because they were very reverent nuns. Like, irreverent nuns are anti-cool, but reverent nuns respect. The stars out there were great. Oh my gosh, genuinely fantastic. And yeah, there's really not much else to say. When I left, I took one of those homemade cookies with me out of spite for not getting to eat them for 4 days, and it was tasty. Well worth it. At the end of day 4, I read through the whole New Testament, save the historical books, aka Acts and Gospels, and that was actually very enlightening. It's been years since I did the New Testament all in one sit down, and here are a few things I've learned. 1, Paul is stupidly repetitive. Like, you finish the Pauline letters and you're like, okay, we get it. Stop arguing about dumb things. Yeet Jewish customs. We're saved by grace and everyone is an idiot. You only had to say it once. 2, anyone who says that salvation is permanent, aka you are genuinely justified and you can't lose it, has never read the New Testament XD. Like, I say that somewhat sarcastically and somewhat seriously. Until this point, I figured the once saved, always saved position to be wrong, but fair enough. But now, having read through it all in one go, I can't just think that. It's literally in every book. Don't fall away, hold fast until the end, be careful, etc. ECT. Like, it is abundantly clear to me that the gospel message claims that yes, you very much can cease to be a genuine Christian, and lol, that is bad, so don't. If you really annoyed me enough about it, I could be convinced to write a paper proving it, but at this point, it just seems so stupidly obvious. It's like writing a paper to disprove the flat earth view. Like, I could, but why bother? 3, the New Testament is stupidly simple. And I say this as, like, the theology guy who has spent untold hours unraveling the theological complexities of the New Testament. But having just straight read all the informative books, it's actually remarkable how basic their message is. I think we add a lot of complexity and nuance when the authors were really just trying to say, Jesus saved you because of your faith, and don't do bad things because he's coming back soon, or something to that effect, XD. It was really interesting seeing all of these verses I have used to proof text in their mega context. It kind of made me be like, I'm not technically wrong, but I think I missed the point. I hate to say it, but stop overcomplicating it. People may actually be onto something, XD. 4, Revelation, still makes no sense. So yeah, I did that, learned some stuff, and then got to the end, and I was like, yep, I think I did what I needed to do here. So upon the morrow, I mounted my phoenix, played some sad goodbye songs, and left the abbey behind. On my way back home, I was excited to eat, so lol, I was speeding, and unfortunately, I was caught. Oh no. The cop was kind, though, and only gave me a ticket for going 9 over rather than the 20 I was going. The cool thing about that encounter, though, is I didn't get any anxiety, so it seemed my traumatic Montana experience has finally worn off. Once I made it home, I then ate a tiny bit and my stomach felt bleh, but then I gradually ate more, including the cookie I brought home from the monastery, and it was marvelous. Genuinely, food is amazing. It was also really good to see my mom and Grace again after being functionally alone for so long. After that, I went to Alley Cat and played chess with Ben, and he actually managed to beat me queenless for the first time. He was quite excited about that. Grace then got me a chai shake, and oh my gosh, it was amazing. Oh yeah, Grace, Emerson, and Katie came to Alley Cat as well, so after Ben beat me and wanted to end on a high note, the four of us played Dutch Blitz, which I won, though Emerson did beat me once. Once I got back home, I caught up on all the texts I missed, which, given my birthday had occurred in the monk retreat, was more than one. XD, after an hour and a half of that, I then did small stuff like washing clothes. Then I educated Ben on all the muscle building info, got drinks and pizza with Mom, and had one of our best conversations yet. I then watched some anime and ate my Vern cinnamon roll I had picked up on the way back from the Abbey before watching the Dave Ramsey videos I needed to, getting the last life update sent out, and then feeling great peace and happiness. The next morning, I woke up at 6 because of the whack sleep schedule the monastery instilled on me. I worked on making a letter for Esther, who is making some art for me. Thereafter, I went to church full of life and pep, walked with Jake, had a great time socially afterward, and then played Magic at the Myers with Sam and Joe for like 4 hours. At the end of all that, I came back home for a surprise birthday for Adelie, which Grace was putting on. Rowan came for the first bit, but he was kind of awkward, and he was only able to stay for like 30 minutes, so I don't know, 'twas odd. But yeah, in the end, it was Emerson, Katie, Grace, Adelie, and I that hung out for the day. We got vatos, tacos, boba, had some good games of Dutch Blitz, and then watched some So Love is War. It's hard to find good episodes, but eventually we called it a night and went to sleep. I got my letter to Esther mailed out the next morning, did all the communications with people, went to work and took a makeup test, as well as worked on this life update. Once work ended, I worked out, did Monday night magic games. There were like 10 of us, so that was cool. And then watched YouTube with Grace and took pills. I had quiet time the next morning, attended class, read, and then went to work and read more. Watched this really good alien movie with my fam for my belated birthday, got some really good gifts, and felt really loved. I then walked around in the cold with Alan, which was a mistake of my making, before then going on a drive and having a good catch-up. Glad that happened. It's been ages since Alan and I talked. The Wednesday, I drove to Longmont for a pointless appointment because the plan was to continue BV, but since I was moving to salvage, they didn't want to give me another chemo round. So instead, I just took a week off from treatment. I then stopped by Walmart for the supplies to change my oil, got Qdoba, and defragged. For some reason, the whole occasion stressed me out. And I then attended another oncology appointment where I met with Dr. Schuster, and that was great. He's a good oncologist. I then played Ben in some queenless chess, won the first game, and got my stalemate for the second. After that, I changed my car's oil, which honestly, I make way too big a deal out of. I have like baby trauma from working on my car because I've done it so many times and so many things have just gone horribly wrong. But honestly, an oil change is so easy. Like I did it in 45 minutes and it was functionally painless. So I should really get over the paranoia that every time I touch my car, it's going to explode. XD. I then got to work on my Vine bookshelf, which is coming along nicely. And that was how I was planning to spend the rest of my evening, but Grace had Emerson over and they wanted me to go on a drive with them, so I did. And it was honestly a better use of the eve. It cheered me up quite a bit. Once we got home, we got to watch The Croods, which is honestly a very well done movie, and yeah, called it a night. The next day, as at the time of this part of the email's composition, I spent the morning organizing my room and building a little Lego Mars mission display. Ben got me another Lego Mars mission set, and those things bring a disproportionate amount of nostalgic joy. I then talked to Triss for an hour or so, and that was good. Attended class, tried to find a literary agent to represent the book on cancer I wanted to write, but lol, it seems like you kind of have to write the book first, so I think I'm doing this wrong, XD. Once I got back from work, I journaled, then I talked with Nessa. We got Chick-fil-A and then went on a drive, and then after that, Benj and I played racquetball, and it was so close, like as close as possible. But I did end up losing in the end, since given how close I came to winning, I deem it a win regardless. That's not how that works. Anyway. And yeah, from there, I organized my books. Guys, I have way too many books. Oh my gosh, it's a problem. And I don't know how I'm ever going to read all of them. And then I ended the night watching anime with Grace and eating popcorn. The day thereafter, I did some quiet time and then work before going to the gym and working out in a mask to get used to it before chemo started. It wasn't that bad. I mean, it wasn't pleasant, but it wasn't also deeply annoying either. I then stalled for a moment before getting to the tap and handle early only for Braden to be 30 minutes late. To be fair, he had an okay excuse, but still, 30 minutes late was big late. We then got food and played chess, and I beat him queenless, as per usual. And then from there, he came back to my house, and we talked more and started getting my gaming computer set up. He lent me his Steam library, though through family sharing, and oh my gosh, that has been such a gift. Braden owns like 200 something games, so not having to pay for those is actually so big. Thousands of dollars of value right there. So yeah, played some Magic games and got that set up, and from there Braden went home and Grace and I watched anime and ate popcorn until it was time to sleep. However, that night my chest was super painful, woke me up multiple times that night. Of course, I assumed it was my cancer in my chest growing and squishing things, but apparently it was not, so I have no idea why my chest hurt so bad that night, but whatever its cause, it sucked. The next day, the chest pain was so dull, so I was very thankful for that. However, the salvage on the horizon, I felt super unmotivated, so I tried to get various games set up with mods, but it was complicated, and I failed. I then just ate pizza and watched anime before getting a spontaneous invite from Jake and joining him for some brief Magic games with his new deck at Joe's house. Then straight from there, Noah came over, and we drove to Denver for my long overdue hangout with him. See, at his wedding, as a gift to all his groomsmen, Noah gave us all vouchers to experiences that he thought we might like. Mine was to a place called Meow, and boy, was he right. On the drive to Denver, we had some really good conversations, and once we arrived, we went to this big, fancy French restaurant where we paid way too much money to eat snails. But lol, I can say I've eaten snails now. They were Then we went from there to the destination of legend. Okay, let me tell you, Meow Wolf is like nothing I've ever experienced. You do not need to be doing drugs to feel like you're tripping. It is the weirdest, most interesting place I think I've ever been. To give you half an understanding of the vibe, observe the following images. This is the entrance. And here is where you get a vibe for the place. These are pictures of just a few of the rooms. There are actually so many, I couldn't photograph them all. Plus, they all look super distinct, but just as weird. Insert pictures here. Like, isn't that crazy? Literally, I've never seen any place like it. And see, at first, as we explored, I was just giddy. The same sort of giddiness I felt when Cameron went really fast in his car, or I feel when I go on a roller coaster. It's like my SE was on steroids, and I actually loved it. However, after an hour and a half, I just felt absolutely drained. It was like this place had sucked out my soul, and it just kept sucking. Like, I was so tired and overloaded. It was honestly really interesting. I think my tertiary SE just couldn't handle the place after an hour and a half XD. But until then, I had some of the most fun in my life, just exploring and touching everything and finding the objectives. So much fun. If you can, you all have to go to Meow Wolf. It's such a cool experience. On the way back home, Noah and I got Frosties, and both of us were actually wiped from the experience. However, we got talking about philosophy, and then I got re-energized, so I felt way better. So yeah, overall, it was an extremely memorable and epic experience. Solid 8.5 out of 10. Once we parted ways, Grace and I just ate popcorn and watched out anime, and that was the day. The next morning, I attended church, no Jakewalk, however. As soon as the service ended, Karina and I hung out for an hour or so. We got noodles and got to catch up on each other's lives, so that was cool. Then I started gaming, which lol was perhaps a mistake, as I am so addicted now. XD, before then going to watch the new Captain America, which sucked, but I did it because Joe finally proposed to Karina and I was part of the celebration group. I had to leave basically as soon as the movie ended and got home back just in time to join the Wade's financial call. And after that, I hung out with Grace, Emerson, and Katie. And we got Krispy Kreme donuts, of which I ate 6. Don't worry about it. And then went fast driving through the canyon, which was much more sketchy than I shall recount here. Again, don't worry about it, but it was so much fun. The final day, as far as the life update is concerned, I did quiet time in the morning, worked, then had a really good convo with mom and dad, played Magic until basically only Jake at Monday night, as I talked with Liam about gaming. Ate popcorn and drank milk as I watched anime with Grace, and then played Buldar's Gate 3 until a little past midnight. You don't understand. It's just D&D in a video game, and it's so much fun. Oh my gosh, I'm actually so hooked on that game. And yeah, that's about it. This has been your daily dose of Alex. I hope you enjoyed yourself, and I will see you again very, very soon. Later.